Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. Russia appears to be tightening control over its digital space with widespread internet disruptions reporting in major cities and signs of a broader push towards online isolation. At the same time, Russians are withdrawing large amounts of cash, reflecting a growing distrust in the country's banking and digital systems. Breaking it all down for us is Ján Michalčák. He's former head of Unit for Countering Hybrid Threats and the Czech Defense Ministry. Mr. Michalčák, thank you for taking the time. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so talk us through what's happening with regard to control over the internet in Russia.
Right. So very briefly, the first thing that needs to be said is that this is hardly something new. We've seen the Russian regime clamping down on any signs of a free internet in the country for ages now. But what seems to have changed and intensified is the scale of that clampdown, because we've now heard reports of pretty much every single major social network that you can think of being severely disrupted and or outright banned. And the latest example in the series of networks that have been affected apparently seems to be Telegram, which is a very important network for the Russian society and also crucially for the Russian army in its conduct of the illegal invasion of Ukraine. So that's also, I think, why we've been hearing so much about the current situation, because now all of a sudden the clampdown has also affected a network literally being used by tens of millions of people in Russia. So both within Russia proper and also on the front line in Ukraine. And that's also why the effects have been felt pretty much firsthand, and we've been talking about it.
Right, well, I mean, there are a number of issues that raises. I mean, the first is what's behind this, because the Russian government is saying, well, it's for security purposes because, people are using the internet to guide Ukrainian missiles onto Russian territory. However, there may well be another reason. What do you think that might be?
Definitely, the stated reason that you've just mentioned is definitely flimsy, to say the least, because Telegram has, no matter if we like it or not, has helped the Russian army immensely in its conduct of the war in Ukraine. So the stated goal of curbing extremism and the potential for terrorism is pretty much a label that you can stick on anything that in any way endangers the existence of the Kremlin regime. So I hardly believe that this is the official reason. What I think is really behind all this is the Kremlin's desire to centralize its control over each and every social network that the Russian population uses, and basically redirect the users to networks directly established and or directly controlled by the Russian regime. Because networks such as Telegram or YouTube in the recent past have never been directly controlled, and this is something that the Kremlin despises, because they want to be able to track the data flowing through the network and also be able to track the people writing posts and publishing content that the regime sees as dangerous to the Kremlin. And for that reason, they've now tried to redirect people from Telegram, if we mention Telegram specifically, to a new network which I believe is called Max, and that is purely established, run and controlled by Vkontakte, which is a major social network within Russia, directly controlled by the Russian government. So the Russian government has full access to whatever happens on the network, and that's also what they've been trying to achieve with the successor, so to speak, of Telegram, the so-called Max network.
But the war started 4 years ago. Why is Russia doing this now?
That's a great question. We have to qualify it first because even the Russian regime itself says that for the soldiers on the front line, there will be still an exception. So the regime will still allow the use of Telegram within Ukraine on the front line so that the soldiers can continue coordinating among themselves. Because the sad reality for the Russian soldier and the happy reality for the rest of the civilized world is that the Russian command structure is so incompetent that sometimes coordinating directly among the soldiers through a social network is much better and much faster because the soldiers can exchange among each other rather than relying on commanders that are incompetent and slow to implement whatever they want to do on the front line. So they still want to keep that exception and allow the soldiers to keep using Telegram. But the problem for them is that even if this exception holds, the people using Telegram within Russia proper are still going to be banned, and it's going to be illegal for people within Russia to be using Telegram. There have even been reports saying that since starting in April, so in a little more than not even a month, 2 weeks, Telegram will be completely banned, and it will be illegal to use it entirely. As of now, if I'm aware correctly, the network is being throttled. So the Russian regime is doing everything in its power to basically make it impossible for people to use it, but it's not strictly speaking illegal. From April onwards, it will be illegal. So for the soldiers on the front line, to get back to them, this could mean, for example, that coordinating efforts such as fundraising or aid to the Russian soldiers on the front line, basically goods, packages, stuff being sent from Russia to the front line, is going to be impossible or severely made more difficult. And that could hamper their efforts in the war, which is good news for all of us, I think.
Indeed. Now, how is this situation affecting the commercial environment in Russia? Clearly, not having access to the World Wide Web, the global internet, is going to hobble businesses as well as individuals. What's happening there?
That's a great question. And we've heard reports of businesses, either Russian businesses or businesses operating within Russia, raising serious complaints about this, which is something that we don't really see that often in Russia. Any sort of dissent against the Kremlin tends to be quite muted. But this time it seems to be a bit different because now it can affect even businesses that don't have anything to do with the government. They don't really want to talk or deal with politics at all. They just want to enrich themselves, make money, and somehow operate in the Russian market, which is also going to be more difficult now because basically any social network that we in the West are used to using is severely being hampered or blocked outright in Russia. So it's going to be more difficult for the business. And there's also been reports of the Russian state wanting to implement a kind of a variant of the Chinese Great Firewall. So they really are exploring, it seems, options to, as you correctly pointed out, cut off the country from the World Wide Web. Now we're only in quotes, talking about blocking a single social network, one of many. But as a country, Russia is still somehow, in a limited fashion, connected to the internet. Yes, it's difficult, but they can still somehow communicate with the rest of the world. The Kremlin, it seems, is now exploring an option, a world in which Russia would be totally isolated. And that could also, among others, for example, pertain to things such as GPS. It seems that the Kremlin is now in talks of developing and purely using its own variant of the GPS that we all know and use every day. So that would make things such as navigation also much more complicated within Russia.
Okay, now this is also impacting the financial services sector with Russians, individuals taking out cash. They feel it's safer in their hands than in the banks. What's the connection between this lack of trust and confidence in the banking system and what Russia is doing technologically?
I think, any efforts to centralize the services that people are used to using on the internet can and does raise distrust among the population. If we go back to the planned network Max that is supposed to replace Telegram in the near future, people have been reporting from within Russia they themselves don't trust Max at all, which is, again, somewhat surprising, because the stereotypical image of the Russian population in the West, I think, sometimes is, Russians blindly following the Kremlin and not really criticizing the regime. And at least in this particular instance, seems to be different. And I think the distrust also spreads to things such as the banking sector, because now even everyday normal people, citizens in Russia, see that the state openly declares that they want to more and more control everyday services that people are used to. And they also see the enormous strain that the Russian economy has been under because of the war and other factors. So this all, and the potential of Russia being cut off from the world on the internet, adds to the distrust, stress, and uncertainty of the population, and could lead to a limited run on banks and basically people stopping to trust the Russian banking sector. I don't think anything major will happen. We're still talking about a rather small portion of the society, I think. But if you compound all of the things we've been talking about together, this could at least make the regime less certain in whatever they want to do, because now, after a long time, people are starting to, in some limited instances, raise their discontent with the regime.
Indeed, so it would seem. Ján Michalčák, as always, thank you so much for sharing your analysis with our audience, and have a good evening.
It was a pleasure.
That brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. Don't go away, lots more coming up.